Hi, it's Monty from Sportive Cyclist, and in this video I'm going to give you a first look and my initial impressions of the Bryton Rider 750 bike computer, which is this one. If I've got the timings of this video publishing correct, this will be coming out on the day that the device was launched. If I haven't got it correct, then I've contravened the terms of the NDA I signed, and I'm probably on my way to jail in Taiwan as we speak. Bryton sent me a device in advance of the launch to try it out. Now, it only arrived a couple of days ago, so I haven't actually had chance to use it on a bike ride. But I've had chance to set it up and to fiddle around with it, have a bit of a play, and I thought I would at least give you some initial impressions. Now, the important thing to note is this is not a review. As mentioned, I haven't actually used it on a bike ride, so it'd be slightly unfair to call this a review, but hopefully you'll find some interesting bits and bobs. You'll see this in the flesh, and yeah, let's get into the video. So what is the Bryton Rider 750? Well, it's a bike GPS device, a bike computer like many of you are used to using, similar to your Garmins and your Wahoos. It uses GPS in order to work out both where it is and also to help you calculate speed and distance covered and all of those good things when you're out on a bike ride. Like most other bike GPS devices, it can connect with a plethora of sensors that you can have secreted about your bike and on your person. So speed and cadence sensors, power meters, heart rate straps, you name it. So where does the 750 sit in the Bryton Rider range and more broadly in the bike GPS market? Well, it's a colour touchscreen device with full mapping and navigation capabilities, so it's pitched to compete with the Garmin Edge 830 at a minimum, maybe even the Edge 1030 and 1030 Plus, and also the Wahoo ELEMNT Roam. So it's right at the top end in terms of features and what it's aiming to do. That all said, Bryton have decided to set the price of the 750 at a very competitive level. Now, rather helpfully, they've sent me a press release where the pricing is given in euros, so we're going to have to do a bit of mental arithmetic in order to work out the relative prices. But the 750 is going to be on sale for 250 euros. That's just for the device itself. If we compare that to the Garmin Edge 830, which in my notes I've got written down as costing £350 on a device only basis, that's pounds. Compare that to your 250 euros, euros being worth just about right now, slightly less than £1. That makes the Rider 750 at least £100 cheaper than the Garmin Edge equivalent. If we compare it to the Wahoo ELEMNT Roam, which is a colour device without a touchscreen, that costs £300. Again, the Bryton device is significantly cheaper. So Bryton has set the price of the Rider 750 at a very competitive level, but how does it match up in terms of performance? As mentioned, this isn't a review. I've only had the device a few days, so these are my initial impressions. Now, in terms of comparison with Garmin and Wahoo, so here we have my Wahoo ELEMNT Bolt, my Garmin Edge 520, and the Rider 450 that Bryton sent me a few years ago to test. Now, the Rider 450 was positioned in terms of features and performance at the same sort of level as the Bolt and the Garmin Edge 520. And whilst it did an adequate job in terms of performance, it had its strange little peccadillos and quirks. The device itself just looked a bit old-fashioned. The screen was set back from the front of the device. The bevels were very big. It just looked chunky and slightly low tech compared to its competitors. Contrast that with the 750, which looks a lot more modern, much more equivalent. Can you be much more equivalent? Much more equivalent with the Garmin and Wahoo devices that it seeks to compete with. So that's a good thing. If you have a look here, you can judge what you think of it in terms of appearance. Now, it's actually quite a weighty little device. It's not like cyclists want additional weight on the bike when they're going uphill, but the additional heft gives the impression, at least, that it's made with reasonable quality components. Certainly the buttons and the screen itself feel a cut above previous generation Rider computers. Size-wise, the device is a bit bigger than, for instance, the Wahoo ELEMNT Bolt. Side by side, you can see them here, and similarly the Edge 520, which I think is probably a similar size to the 530, but by comparison with a mobile phone, it is still a pretty small device. This is an Apple iPhone 7. Talking of the screen, its colour and its touch screen, it's 2.8 inches, which I think is probably the diagonal dimension there, and it goes quite close to the edge of the device. It's quite high contrast, currently with a black background. I don't know if you can change it to a lighter background with dark letters and numbers. It's bigger than, for instance, the Wahoo ELEMNT Bolt screen. If you look side by side here. Now, one of the issues with the Rider 450 is that I didn't find it particularly easy to use, particularly intuitive. In the short time I've had this device, it already feels a lot more intuitive. It feels like Bryton have put quite a lot of time and effort into improving the overall user interface of the device. And that probably brings us on to the app. There's always an app. Now, similar to the Garmin Connect app and the Wahoo, what do we call it? The Wahoo ELEMNT app, Bryton has its own Bryton Active app. So when it comes to changing settings on the Rider 750, you can either mess around within the settings and the menu options on the device using the touchscreen, which actually isn't that hard, or you can do it on the app. So you can change things like whether or not it has ketones, the sounds, how long it takes, actually that's useful, how long it takes for the backlight to turn off. Let's say never. There we go, brilliant. In addition to changing general settings on the device, you can also use it in order to update the data fields on the screens that you're going to use whilst riding with the device on your handlebars. Now, one thing that I was quite impressed with when I was messing around with it was the speed at which it updates when you amend a setting in the app. So let's test that now. We're going to go with the high jeopardy option of changing the language to a totally different one. So you can see that the device currently is showing words in English. Let's change it to Chinese. How long? There we go. I pressed it. It took about half a second. If I switch it back to English, which I'm going to do now, and we're back to English. It's pretty impressive, really. It means you can play around on here, settings immediately show on here. And generally, the user experience when you're messing around with the settings on the app, or indeed on the device itself, is pretty good. One thing I did find difficult with the Rider 450 was generally I didn't find it particularly intuitive. I couldn't always work out how to do a pretty basic thing. That's not been the case with the 750. I've been using it a few days and I've not once read the instructions. I've not once Googled how to do something. I think I managed to set it up okay. Now, one of the things I haven't done yet is pair the 750 with a data sensor on the bike. I thought I would do that live just to show whether that was easy or not. I'm going to use the speed and cadence sensor supplied by Bryton with this device, and that's a useful prompt to show you what you get in the box. So if you go for the device only version, which I think is the 750E, you get the device, which I've shown you. Inside the box, it was slightly better packed than this when I got it. You get handlebar mount with a range of rubber bands to help secure it. Got a little mini lanyard, USB cable, mini hex / Allen key in order to fix the out front handlebar mount, which you get here, and that's a little, I guess, diameter reducer for your handlebar, should you have very narrow diameter handlebars for your out front mount. So that's what you get if you just go for the device only. And if you go for the bundle, which is called the 750T, it comes with a heart rate strap, and it comes with speed and cadence sensors, which, well, let's fit them to the bike now. And wheel. It's flat. That's literally just happened. So I've just discovered this is flat. It's not very helpful. It's gonna have to be the speed sensor that goes on here. Normal people probably read the instructions. Okay. So, speed sensor goes around the front axle. Let's move that back. Now if we move on to the cadence sensor, I've removed the bit of plastic that prevents the battery from going onto the thingamajig. Technical term, closing it up. That needs to go in there. Let's try a medium. All this just to see how quickly it pairs. So that is attached. Let us see if the sensors are transmitting. When you turn it round like this, one would imagine that will activate the cadence sensor and start it transmitting. Now I'm doing this from the device saying it's detected sensors. Oh, it's detected a cadence sensor. You see that? Oh, it's gone. That's because I stopped turning the thing. Helpful. So it's detected it. Bloody hell, this is ridiculous. Okay, so the device has connected with the cadence sensor. Let's see if I can get it to show up on the device. See, I might put the speed sensor on the back wheel. That would make more sense. Okay, so the speed sensor is now fitted on the rear wheel. So we detected this cadence sensor using the device. Let's see if we can use the app this time in order to detect the speed sensor. So we're adding a sensor. We're looking for speed. Not showing currently. Oh, hello. There it is. So that is showing, and immediately we can see on the device. What does it say? Ah, the bike's in motion. Do I want to start recording? I'll say no, but you can see that it's coming through. What I haven't been able to find yet is a cadence data field. So we're going to now try and find a cadence sensor by going to the bike settings and then the grid settings. Here you can see that there's a graphical representation of the Bryton Rider 750 on my phone. Average speed is down here in the bottom, and I'm going to change that to cadence. You can see it's flipped into cadence, and now if I turn it, the speed is registering. This is hard because I'm miles away, but the cadence is also showing at the bottom of the device as well. So I can confirm that it's pretty straightforward to connect the data sensors to the bike and then to the Rider 750, which is actually no small thing if you've had a bike GPS for 10 years or so, because back in the day it used to be an awful lot more hassle. Not in this case. Okay, so we're running out of light here in the Sportive Cyclist service course, so I'm going to make this last section of the video brief. I'm going to quickly run through the features of the Rider 750 that basically I haven't had chance to test quite yet. And to help me, I'm going to use the press release. So we've already said it's got a colour touchscreen with a actually quite usable graphical user interface. It's got navigation on board, so it's got preloaded maps, and also I think you have the ability to upload your own maps to the device. It has turn-by-turn navigation, and as I mentioned earlier on in the video, it has onboard rerouting capability. So unlike, say, my Wahoo ELEMNT Bolt and the Edge 520 that use what's sometimes called cookie crumb navigation, i.e. the route itself is just a series of dots that they overlay onto a map, the Rider 750, like the Edge 830 and the 1030, has the ability to reroute intelligently if you go off course, a bit like on your phone maps or on your car GPS. The press release also says that the 750 has online voice search powered by Google, so supposedly you talk into the device and it will be able to find something on the map and route you there without you having to press any buttons. I have a slight level of skepticism because that sounds like that could require quite a lot of software and hardware grunt in order to power it, but hey ho, let's keep an open mind and I'll report back in the full review. The Rider 750 has ANT Plus FEC Smart Trainer support, so if you have a smart indoor trainer, then you can use this device in order to control the resistance levels. Sadly, that's something that I will struggle to try out because right now I only have a dumb trainer. Maybe that's something that I can use the proceeds from this highly remunerative cycling YouTube channel in order to purchase in the future. maybe in about 5 years. Moving on, and we're into the more esoteric bike computer features. The Rider 750 will work with the Garmin Varia radar system, so you'll be able to detect whether there are cars approaching from behind you if you have one of those radars attached to your bike. And if you have an e-bike, the Rider 750 will communicate with said e-bike either via Shimano steps or whatever. I don't have an e-bike. I've got no idea what features an e-bike might have, but if you have one and you're worried whether the Rider 750 will work with it, worry no more. And that's about it. So let's have a few confusions. So a few concluding thoughts after messing around with the Rider 750 for a few days. As I mentioned earlier on, it's a smart looking device. I certainly wouldn't feel embarrassed to have this attached to my handlebars. I note that it's in use by one of the World Tour pro cycling teams, I think Israel Startup Nation. Presumably they're going to get some reasonable feedback from professional riders as to whether or not it does the job on a professional level. In terms of device performance, it feels like Bryton with the Rider 750 have made a significant step forward to previous Bryton Rider models that I've tried. It's a lot closer to my experience with Wahoo and Edge devices. As mentioned, I haven't tested it on any rides, but I've been impressed so far with how easy it has been to set up, and as you saw earlier on in the video, how easy it was to pair it with sensors on the bike. So I've got a good feeling that it will probably work quite well out on the road. I'll obviously report back in the review. And finally, I'll come back to price. Bryton have made a very strong statement by pricing the Rider 750 at €250. I guess they'll probably end up pricing it at £250. I'll update you if it's different. At that level, it's significantly cheaper than equivalent models from Garmin and Wahoo. And whilst Bryton might not quite have the brand prestige of Wahoo and Garmin, it certainly seems as if their performance is getting closer and closer. And if nothing else, it will make both of those other companies and other makers of bike computers think about where they should be positioning their own prices going forward, which for consumers like you and me is probably a good thing. If you want to hear more from me on the subject of bike computers, I've reviewed my Wahoo ELEMNT Bolt and I'll link to that somewhere up there. Equally, if you want to hear more about the Bryton Rider 450, I'll also put a link to that somewhere on the screen. So I hope you found this video of my first impressions of the Bryton Rider 750 bike computer helpful. If you did, then please do give this video a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos from me on the subject of road cycling, then please do hit the subscribe button. I've been Monty, this is Sportive Cyclist, the mammal channel, and I'll see you in the next video. This was a long video to make.